Welcome back to the third episode of the Comic Book Savant video channel. This episode, I'm going to talk about one of the biggest things that plagues all of us as comics podcasters, or not even that so much as even as just comic fans. It's always books or stories that everyone touts as must read, must watch if it's movies or television that you never quite get around to. You always think about it. You might actually buy it, buy the book or buy the trade or buy it digitally, however you get your medium. And you just happen to never get around to it. So I'm going to do my top 10 biggest stories that I haven't read but plan to sooner or later. In some cases, very soon, because I actually even forgot that I owned the books. So I have really no excuse not to read them. The first one on the list is going to be XMen: The Dark Phoenix Saga. This is an integral story to any X-Men fan. It was done by Chris Claremont and John Byrne. This is the penultimate story if you're an X-Men fan. I've never read it. I've read literally hundreds, if not more, X-Men comics and stories over the years, but never quite got around to reading the Dark Phoenix Saga. I saw the adaptation they did on the 90s X-Men cartoon. They're currently producing the next movie in the series. Fox film series is going to be based on the Dark Phoenix Saga. It'd be interesting how they adapt that to film, but I've never actually read the story itself. So that is the first one, and this is in no particular order, just stating books that I haven't read. Next would be Crisis on Infinite Earths, written by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. Again, another huge story in comics history, the whole multiverse over in the DC universe. I wasn't at the time when this was a thing. I was around. I wasn't heavy into DC comics. I was mainly at the time all I could get my hands on were Marvel comics. So it was only years later in my adulthood, because I was still relatively young. I was around 10 or so when this story was originally printed and released in comic form, and I just never got around to it. I think at one point I bought the trade of it, and when I got rid of all my physical medium, when it came to comics, I think I just sold it. Had every intention to read it, just never did. Next is the Infinity Gauntlet by Jim Starlin and artwork done by George Perez and Ron Lim. This book I bought a couple years ago when we knew they were going to do the next Marvel, the big Avengers movie. Was going to be some sort of adaptation of this story with the inclusion of Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet. Comixology had it on sale, grabbed it, just haven't sat down to read it. Now, this is probably one of the books on this list that I will actually read more so sooner than later, because I never had a chance to read it. I heard it was an epic space story. I love the Marvel space universe, but just never got around to reading this. So I'm looking forward to digging into it before Avengers Infinity War comes out next summer. So definitely want to get on the ball with this one in the next couple of months, and I will probably do a review and have that featured on the show. So that'll be upcoming. Next is Watchmen by Alan Moore and artwork done by Dave Gibbons. Okay, it's a story behind this. When the Zack Snyder movie was coming out, I think I just bought the trade. I don't think I bought the absolute, because the name was so hard to find at the time. I bought the trade. I tried to read it, and I just couldn't. It was just too much. It was just so dense and so much. I maybe got like 2 or 3 pages in, and I was like, I'm going to get back to it. It just never materialized at all. I remember reading another book, because that was in like 85, that magical year where I think like V for Vendetta, Watchmen, The Dark Knight Returns, all these huge classic stories that came out, all came out like within a span of a year or two. I read The Dark Knight Returns. It was a long, hard read because comics were written so different back in when you go back and read comics from the 70s and 80s, even comic books that I read and loved from that time frame as being a kid, so many words on page. You didn't get a chance to see the artwork as well. The comics language, how comics flow were so different. It was so many words on page. So it was so much of an overload. And at times it's a clunky read in a lot of cases. And Watchmen, I just couldn't. I went back through it after I saw the movie. I remember leaving the movie, going straight home and just seeing, because Zack Snyder, is so known for his visuals and how it compared to the book, but never went back and read it. And I just want to take a time out, even though it has nothing to do with the top 10 list, for my condolences to go out to Zack Snyder. He's dealing with the family tragedy that really hit the news wire in the past day or so. My heart goes out to him and his family for his loss. No one wants to lose a child, so my heart goes out to him and his family. But again, back to the list, I did compare, but never went back and read. So Watchmen is definitely on the list. Another one is Hellboy, the Volume 1, Seeds of Destruction, the original first volume, first trade of Hellboy. Always have been interested in Hellboy. Somewhat enjoyed the first two movies they did. They recently announced that they're moving forward and they're going to do a reboot of the Hellboy movie series. So it'll be interesting to see that. I'm excited about it. I like the character. I think I even seen I seen parts. I need to go back and see if I can find them on Netflix or on one of the streaming services. They did some animated Hellboy movies as well that I saw bits and pieces of. I caught when they were on TV and just seen bits and pieces of them that looked interesting, but I definitely want to check them out. But Hellboy, I've never got a chance to read it. And by seeing the movies, it pulled my interest towards the character. I've heard nothing but good things and have gotten many suggestions over the years to check out Hellboy. Just never got around to it. Next is from one of my favorite writers from last episode's top 10 writers of all times list, and I'm going to get it right this time. It will be down, a link to it will be down in the description box, or if I'm smart enough to figure it out, it will be somewhere right about here now, I hope. Anyway, so this was done by Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross. This was a wonderful series where the story was centered around a photographer, a bystander, taking pictures of all these heroic acts of heroes saving people in New York City. Very beautiful artwork done by Alex Ross. People say it's like that masterpiece of Marvel, like this a beautiful story that was told, and they did a sequel, I believe, as well. But I never got to check out this original story, and I want to at least, give it a try at some point. So that's one of my to read books. The next one is Preacher, Volume 1, Gone to Texas. Preacher has blown up over the past year with the AMC show. I've heard so many recommendations, especially when I first started doing the show years ago, that they were like, that's the, especially if you want to get into something that's not superhero based. A lot of people said this was the book I suggested to someone that wasn't in comics that pulled them into the world of comics. So I've always heard this phrase thrown around, preacher, preacher, preacher. I just never got around to doing it. I don't know if I would like it or not. I've seen, commercials and ads and trailers and stuff for the television show. Don't necessarily know if it's my speed, but I'm always willing to give something a try, to at least check out the first trade. Next on the list is The Authority. this was one book that I was really geeked up about trying. Back when I started the show, a lot of people recommended it heavily. And at the time, they were some absolute editions out, or hardcovers and absolute editions out of it. But they stayed sold out. It's written by Warren Ellis, and the artwork was done by Brian Hitch. Brian Hitch was super popular at the time as an artist with his photorealistic style. He had been doing some stuff over at Marvel with the Ultimates, but doing this with Warren Ellis over at Wildstorm. Was super, interested in it, but it was always sold out and I couldn't get it. And just over the years, I just lost track of it. So now it seems like a good time as any, and I've read a lot more of Warren Ellis's work recently, like with his work he did over at Marvel with the Secret Avengers that I really liked. He did a few short runs on that. Also, his recent Moon Knight run that he did that was very short-lived, but thoroughly enjoyed. So I've become a big fan of Warren Ellis. Didn't know much about him before. He's really been brought to the forefront of my radar more so recently. So I'm gonna go back and anytime I start liking a writer or his style of writing, I like to try to go back and look at previous work. And I've had interactions or read different stuff with the characters as they were brought into the New 52 with the Wildstorm universe and Midnighter and things like that. So I have, real interest of where all these characters came from. So now I definitely want to go back and check out, at least like I said, this first trade or first couple of trades, this initial run by Warren Ellis on The Authority. Next is Powers Volume 1, Who Killed Retro Girl. I'm a huge fan of Brian Michael Bendis. If you listened to the last episode, you know this when I did my top 10 writers list. This is the main work that he was known for before he came over to Marvel is Powers. I bought a couple of the Powers hardcovers. They were on my shelf, the definitive editions. I'm going to dig down in this. I love Brian Michael Bendis. I love his collaboration with Mike Avon Oeming as well. I like Oeming as a writer as well because he branched off and did some writing later on his own. I like him as an artist and a writer, and I love their collaborations. Just never sat down and read it. Had it on my bookshelf, had multiple volumes on my bookshelf. I did go back. Comixology had a sale some time ago, and I got a good chunk of issues, like at 99 cents per issue, and I loaded up. And this is something that I'm kind of ashamed that I haven't read yet because, again, he's one of my top writers, and this is his seminal work before he blew up at Marvel. I've read so much of his Marvel stuff, but never read what made him a name. So definitely need to check out Powers sometime soon. And last but not least is one, I hated the movie that was based on this property, but The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. This is Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill. This was another book that was extremely hot back when I was first starting up the show. But again, like The Authority, you could not get the issues anywhere. They constantly stayed sold out. They didn't do multiple printings of trades like they do now. Digital wasn't a thing, so when it was something that was hard to find, it was just hard to find. And I heard nothing but good things. They've done so many different printings. Alan Moore has taken this, the series to many different publishers over the years as he's moved around and did different volumes of the series. But just the original volume 1 of the series, I need to read at some point. I thought the characters and the artwork were very interesting. Again, it was just one of those things that was hard to find, and after trying to find it for so long and wasn't able to get it, you just kind of forget about it because there's still so many new books that are coming out that you want to read that it kind of falls inadvertently to the wayside. So these are just 10 books that are major stories or known to be very classic stories or books that I never got a chance to read as of yet, but I plan to. And I will update you guys either here or on the audio show when I do finally sit down and read those stories. I'll definitely do a review. I make a point to do a whole episode based on that particular book as I get through with it. Again, I appreciate your help and support. We're 3 episodes in, guys. Like I said, I'm here to stay. The links for the audio show and how to follow me on social media will all be down below. Again, check out the website. It is comicbooksavant.com. You can find any of the previous episodes there. It is a backlog of audio episodes here. Probably it's around 30 or some odd episodes of the audio show. You can see the playlist and check that out. If you want to support the show, links down at the bottom to the Patreon page. Go support, subscribe, like this video with a thumbs up, share the video, and I will see you guys again next week for another episode of Comic Book Savant video. Take care.